Vikings had cutlery specifically for earwax. We know this to be true. They carried little utility tools on their belts, and one of them was a little spoon for scraping out earwax, which I don't think they would have done in the middle of a battle or in the middle of a feast, but who can say? The Vikings are fascinating people. Vikings had nits. Not a big shock, I know, but the problem might not have been as bad as you think. You see, in Viking graves, we found tiny little nit combs, so we know that Vikings were very aware of nits and probably spent a lot of time digging them out. Obviously, we've got no photographs of Vikings, so we don't know if this was any sort of part of a ceremony, but I'd like to think that Vikings sat in a circle, like monkeys, picking nits out of each other's hair. Nom, 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 nom. So what were Viking toilets really like? Well, until recently, we didn't really think they had toilets. If you're on a boat, you just stick your bum over the side, let the wind carry it away, hopefully check which way the wind's going if you've got other people on your boat. Maybe you did it in a bucket. And we're under this assumption that in Viking settlements, people just sort of went to the toilet, I don't know, perhaps behind a hedge or something, behind a Viking shrubbery. And bizarrely, we know that they mixed their waste. Vikings mixed their poo up with animal poo and used it on their allotments. Well, they didn't have allotments, they used it on their vegetables, they used it as manure. But that all changed very recently when a Viking toilet was found. An actual toilet. Had a little wooden seat, hole in the middle of it, everything, and lots and lots and lots of Viking poo. So that was some lucky archaeologist's job to start digging through all that. What do you think to that? Do you like it? Did Viking houses smell of dog poo? Now stop for a minute and think, what would a Viking home smell like? Smoke maybe? Maybe roasting meat? Maybe, could be almost anything. But archaeologists many times have found quite a lot of dog poo inside Viking homes. Now you might think the dog poo is just in the floor, but they've actually found quite a lot of dog poo in the walls. And I think that poses a bigger question, doesn't it? How did Vikings deal with acne? Now, Vikings did have acne, they had zits, because it's just a natural part of adolescence. And you might think Vikings would just tough it out, squeeze them and just get on with their lives. No, we know for a fact they had lots of very natural remedies, tinctures on moss, and other very, very natural products to dab very gently at their little owies, their little spots. We know that some Vikings lived on for years after losing parts of their body. Now you might think all the way back then that if you were stabbed with a sword or cleaved in some way or had your skull cracked, it might be instant death, but it wasn't. Archaeologists have found many Viking remains where there's evidence that the bones have healed and healed well. So if you're a Viking hit with a sword, it might not have mattered. Vikings navigated using magic crystals. Obviously you can navigate your Viking longship if you know where the sun is, but what do you do on a cloudy day like today where there is no sun? You might be bobbing around on the ocean. They used something called a sunstone, which was a piece of crystal which you could hold up and it would use polarizing effect of the sun. So you could locate the sun wherever you were. How cool is that? A fossilised Viking turd, older than the British language, helped scientists dig into the DNA of whipworm, which is a gut parasite that's been around for 55,000 years. Does that make it a clever poo? Are your poos that clever? Vikings were pretty good mathematicians. The longships, always 6 times longer than they are wide, ratio of 6 to 1. Later ones, the really fast longships, 11 times wider. No, 11 times longer than they were wide. So maybe not all mathematicians in the Viking world built ships, but we know some of them did. Pretty interesting. Did you like it? Shall I make more? Would you like to see my foot? I've told you before about the 20 centimetre long Viking poo that was 5 centimetres wide. It's a poo that just keeps on giving. So there was a paleoscatologist, yep, that's a scientist who works with old poos, and when they were examining this giant poo found in York in 1972 underneath a pavement in front of Lloyd's Bank, they dropped it. They broke the poo. The poo cracked. The Viking poo broke, and they had to fix it. So however bad your day at work's been today, I bet you haven't dropped a poo that was once described as the crown jewels of fossilised poos. And I bet you haven't had to fix a poo. Am I right? If I'm not right, let me know in the comments. If you travel back in time, how would you spot the rich Vikings? I mean, the ones that were really, really doing well. They might have a longship, but not all Vikings actually had ships. That's one of those strange myths. You'd be able to tell if a Viking was properly important and properly rich by the amount of butter he stored, or grain. You see, having surplus food was a sign that you were bossing it. And did you know they kept their butter underground? They were called a butter box, and also they kept their grain in pits. Did you like this? Would you like to know more? Let me know. Horsey, can I tickle the horsey? Where is it? Up and... right there? Other side.
Go back. Down.
There. Well, the Vikings had an answer. At least it's like...
Don't like your phone box.